File system structures, they're different on Linux to FreeBSD. I thought I'd go over the directory structure of FreeBSD in keeping with our learning FreeBSD. There are some fundamental differences, but generally it's very similar. Let's jump into it. One of the biggest differences between the Linux and the FreeBSD file structure, or the file system structure, it's a little bit more regimented on FreeBSD. There aren't so many places that third-party packages can install files. So let's go through them. I'm not going to compare, I'm just going to go through the FreeBSD ones. So here I am logged in as root, and you'll see I'm in my home directory. And there's our test files from the last video. So let's cd to the root directory and have a look. Right, first things first. I have enabled the color shell on my FreeBSD install. And to do that, it was quite simple. I added in an alias for ls in the CSHRC, so that is F and G minus capital F, capital G, and then I set an environment variable of CLI color. And those two in conjunction are giving me a nice color shell, just to denote the difference between a file and a directory. Right off the bat, the first thing that you'll see is that there are a couple of files in our root directory. There's the base CSHRC, there's a .profile, a copyright, and an entropy. So let's take a look at the copyright and the entropy. The CSH and the profile, they're just the default ones. And there you go. There is the FreeBSD copyright, all the way up. A load of dodgy characters that we can't read. That's the entropy file. So you've got some directories there. They're the ones in blue. You've got a bin, which is for binaries. So /bin is for user utilities fundamental to both single user and multi-user environments. So if we take a look in there, we'll see some stuff that is usable across multi and single user. So for instance, cat, which I just used, CP, copy, CH flags, loads of stuff, chmod, which we looked at last time, df, ls, which is the command we're using here, and various other ones. So that's the /bin. Underneath, we've got the /boot, and that's where all the files for booting FreeBSD live. So we'll have a quick look in there. We won't cover much of it. So you'll see things like the loader.conf, where you can add in variables for NVIDIA graphics cards or various other things. So let's have a quick look at that. There you go. There's a few things that are being run. Now, some of this stuff was set up when installing FreeBSD. For instance, the destructive dtrace, we turned that off. ZFS, we turned that on. And you can add other things in there as well, of course. And there's all our bootloaders and ZFS stuff. So the Z-pool cache. Again, can't read it, so we'll cut that bit out. So there's the ZFS cache. The kernel lives here as well, in the kernel. There's all the modules that load with the kernel when it's booting up. Lots and lots and lots. So you'll also see some logos there, which are the logos that you see when you're booting up FreeBSD in the bootloader, various other bits. So there we go. That's the boot. So we've got dev. This is devices. This is where all your hardware lives, which are usually represented as a file. So for instance, let's have a... So there's our disks. Look, DA1. DA0, the fire stuff. Let's come out of that. So that's all the devices. ETC. Oh. ETC on FreeBSD is where all the system configuration files live that are not to do with boot up or to do with the boot process. Booting up, they're listed in here as well. So let's have a look. Lots of files. Let's clear that and do an ls more so we can go through them. So what you'll find in here is the system files like the aliases database for any mail services that are running. the base CSH scripts, the login, the logout, cron tabs, at least the system cron tab, and a ton of other stuff. The FreeBSD update, configuration file, group file, hosts. If you're running jails, you set them up in here. The MOTD template, the master password, which give you loads and loads of information on all the users. We won't look at that in too much detail. So what else can we see here? So we've got all our periodic stuff. So scripts that run at certain times, SSH setup. If it's a configuration file that you're looking for that has to do with the system itself rather than installed software, this is most likely where it's going to be. That's etc. lib. Critical system libraries needed for binaries. They live in lib. There'll be quite a few files in here. And there'll just be loads of libraries. We don't need to worry about those. What else have we got? Got libexec. Not so much in there. But they're critical system files that live in there. Media. Probably won't see much in there. But this is the directory where if you plug a USB device in, or this is usually where it will show up as a mount point. So this would be where, or floppy disks or CDs, that kind of stuff. It's very similar to the MNT directory, which again, nothing in it because I haven't got anything plugged into it. But other stuff will mount here, and it's used by administrators usually as a temporary mount place. So we've also got net, nothing in here. And that'll be usually where your automated NFS shares go. So we've also got a proc directory there. And again, there's nothing in it. So I haven't set up any proc. This is the process file system, or procfs. Again, not used. So it's used in using mount procfs, and you can check the man page for that. And next on the list is rescue. Now, these files are used when your system's had a problem and it doesn't boot properly, and you can go into the rescue disk and it will use all these files. And most of them are copies of what's in bin or sbin, but there's some other stuff in there that are useful, like the ZFS binary. And then you've got root. This is root's home, which is in the top level directory. There's our test files. Won't say too much about that, but that's exactly where all root's home stuff is. You've got sbin, which is system programs and administration utilities fundamental to both single and multi-user environments. So it's a bit like the bin. So in bin, they're user utilities, and in sbin, they are system programs and administration utilities. Yeah, like Bechtel for boot environments. Great tool. So you've also got the temp directory there, where all the temporary files that FreeBSD uses are stored. We've got user, which is where all the user data is placed. Majority of user utilities and applications, yeah. So if you install anything that's a package or a port software, this is where it ends up. Then there's var, a few bits there, which is the multi-purpose log, temporary, transient, and spool files. Enough said. It's where you find most of your log files in var log. You will have seen a few other things there. So home and sys, for instance, they've got the little ampersand sign at the end. So if we do a cd into home, basically a shortcut to another directory. And there's where Gary's home directory lives, and the same for sys. There you go, links to user source sys. So there's my little explanation on FreeBSD's file structure, or file system structure. Hope this is helpful for you. If I've gone a bit too fast, feel free to go back and pause and do what you need to do. Like I said, it's not in depth, it's just a slight overview. So yeah, if you find it useful, please give it a thumbs up, and check the link in the description for Discord. Don't forget to subscribe. And as always, I'll see you in the next video. Take care.